So hello everyone and welcome to MGC's third artist talk of the fall 2021 term. We're very pleased today to be joined by Cheryl Hochberg. Before we get started, we would just like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the Sherman Foundation, the Pierre and Tana Matisse Foundation, our members, and our other donors and friends for making our artist talks possible. A little bit about Cheryl. Cheryl Agulnik Hochberg received her BFA from the Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia and her MFA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She currently lives and works in New Jersey with a studio at the Manufacturers Village Studio Complex in East Orange. Cheryl's prints have been included recently in exhibitions at the China Printmaking Museum, Seek the Trace, in Shenzhen, China, Gutenberg Arts, made here in New Jersey, USA, the 2021 Print Biennial in Yerevan, Armenia, and the Lux Center for the Arts, Surface Impressions, an international exhibition of contemporary woodcut in Lincoln, Nebraska, USA. Recent solo exhibitions of her work include the Luce Center for Art and Religion in Washington, D.C., Viz Arts in Rockville, Maryland, and Five Points Gallery in Torrington, Connecticut. Artist residencies are an integral part of Cheryl's studio practice. She has participated as a fellow in many programs, including Gutenberg Arts STAR Space-Time Artist Residency, Guanlan Original Printmaking Base, Shenzhen, China, Playa, Summer Lake, Oregon, UCross, Claremont, Wyoming, Vermont Studio Center, Johnson, Vermont, Gentel, Banner, Wyoming, the studios at Key West, Florida, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts in Amherst, Virginia. Cheryl Hochberg was professor of art at Kutztown University from 1990 to 2018. She served as chair of the Department of Art and Art History from 2007 to 2018. At retirement, she was awarded Professor Emeritus status in 2018. So with that, we'd like to let Cheryl start talking and showing her art. If you have any questions, there's a button at the bottom of your screen called Q&A. You can type your questions in there and we'll be keeping an eye on them. Cheryl may stop in the middle to take some questions or we may do them at the end, depending how it goes. So with that, Cheryl, please take it away. Where's Cheryl? Oh.
Hey, sorry, hold on. Okay, sorry. I'm ready to go now. Okay, is that good? Can everybody see me?
Yes.
Hold on one second. Let me just do this. Somebody just texted me and said they couldn't get in and I just took care of it. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and for listening to this. What I thought I would do tonight is I have maybe about, I have a bunch of slides and about maybe 30 minutes of talking to share with you. And then I was hoping we could turn it into more of a conversation and that if you have questions along the way, you can note them on the Q&A. Is that right, what we decided to do? And then, or we can do it at the end or something like that. But you know, hopefully we can get more of a conversation going. What I wanted to do in this talk was to kind of first start out by setting my prints into a context where like I make a lot of stuff. I make paintings, I make prints, I make installations, I'm starting to do some public art. And I wanted to first of all kind of talk about my work as a whole and then kind of zero in on my prints and talk about how they fit into the larger body of work and kind of what their specific, how I think about them specifically and what the trajectory is there. So if that's okay, we'll start with some images. Is that, let me share, hang on one second. And you don't want to see a game. There we go. Okay, do you all see the slides? Is that okay? Now I don't see any comments, so if people have problems seeing, then let Bruno know, and then I guess they'll take care of it. So we're good to go here?
Yes, looks good.
Everything's good?
Yes.
Okay, so I think as a way of introducing myself, the best way to introduce myself is to say that I'm a wanderer. I think that I sometimes feel most at home when I'm most a stranger. I love to go to places I don't understand and to explore them. And when I'm in a new place, I kind of listen to it and try to figure out what kind of story it has to tell. And then my studio practice is really about giving voice to these places and telling their stories. I think it would have been really nice if it's never really been possible for me to kind of think of a really cool place and then go there. Most of the time, when I go to a place, it's because I have some reason to be there, especially if it's in art. I think most of my work comes from time spent in artist residencies. So I don't know if everybody on the list is an artist and knows what a residency is, but a residency is an organization that hosts artists or hosts creative people for some period of time. Many of them are residential, some of them are not, but the ones that are residential, you go away, they give you housing, they usually give you food, they give you a studio space, and you work there for weeks or months, however the arrangement is. The thing about residencies is that, and I think the artists who are listening to this will know this, that it's not like people who do them decide to go a certain place, so you apply to that residency. A lot of times you have to apply to 5 or 6 or 7 residencies to get one because they're competitive. So there's a little bit of serendipity about where I have ended up going. When I apply to a residency, it's because I perceive that there's going to be subject matter there for me, even though I don't know maybe exactly what it's going to be. That is the work of being there. But then a residency happens and I go there and I begin to explore the place, and it becomes the content for like often the next year's body of work. So when I go to a residency, I bring a project with me, usually based on the previous place that I've been. And then while I'm there, I take a lot of pictures and I meet a lot of people and I have conversations. I'm usually especially interested in the ecology of a place. I'm interested in both the landscape and the animals, but I'm interested in them especially in the context of the relationship of people and ecology, and how not just how people change the ecology, but how ecology shapes the people that are there. And even though the subject matter of my work is usually animals and landscape, the stories of people are very much in my mind when I make those pictures. So taking you to the 4 pictures that are in front of you, these are just 4 places that I have spent time in the last few years. In the upper left is Playa in South Central Oregon. In the upper right is a landscape on the Gentile property in Sheridan, Wyoming, where I was just this past summer. In the lower left is also from this past summer when I was at Gentile. I spent some time also on the Crow Reservation, which is about an hour north across the Montana border. And the lower right is in the Guanlan Original Printmaking Base in Shenzhen, China, which is in South China. So those are just some examples of the places that I go when I do these residencies and do my exploring. After I've been somewhere and I come back, any number of things might happen in my studio. I might, for example, make a painting. So this is an example of my paintings. It is large. It's about 60 by 80 inches, so about 5 feet by 7.5 feet. And it's made of it's on 4 pieces of paper. It's made of, the goat and the cactus are painted in watercolor. The background, the mountain and the sky is in pastel. The rock is a digital photo collage. The flower on the goat's head is made of feathers. So it's collaged with all kinds of material, which when you step away from it, it looks pretty realistic. But when you look up close, you kind of see how how constructed these paintings are. I also do a lot of installation. This is an installation that happened in my studio because it was kind of the sum total of a year's work that I did over the course of the pandemic. Obviously, in the pandemic, I couldn't travel. And so the subject matter of my work for a year and a half was New Jersey. Kind of when I got the sense that I wasn't going to be able to travel, I set myself the project of the Passaic River as it travels out to the Meadowlands. And I began by just walking every day and taking a lot of pictures and looking at it. It was actually new landscape for me because we had only moved to New Jersey about 6 months before, or 9 months before the pandemic started. So I had been really interested in exploring the landscape anyway. And there was, it felt like a really good opportunity when the pandemic came. So at first I began to just make the works on paper that are on the right-hand slide. I made about one a week. And then I began to make prints, and then it sort of all culminated in the installation on the left. And the main wall of it that you see is a 19-foot rendition of the Pulaski Skyway that I made out of foam board and acrylic paint. And below it is a like stand-up rendition of a site that I saw on an off-ramp of the New Jersey Turnpike onto Route 280. And what I was, in the end, like if I think of these places as telling me a story, the story that the Meadowlands told me was about these intensely kind of busy pockets of nature and these intensely busy pockets of people, and that are mostly oblivious to each other, but they kind of all coexist and are tangled up inside of each other. So in a way, like when you walk into my studio, there's like the drawings are on walls on both sides of this, and then there is this installation in the middle. And what I was really getting at was that you can kind of represent all of this nature, but without the presence of the Pulaski Skyway, it doesn't really tell the story that I was kind of seeing as I was there. So that kind of gives you a sense of like some of the range of the subject matter that I take when I approach a place. This third slide is 4 of the pieces that I made when I came. This was just before the pandemic when I came back from China. So again, the top 2 are paintings similar to the one that I showed you of the goat. They're 60 by 80 inches. I put one with me so you could get a sense of the scale of them. And they're, again, watercolor and pastel and digital photos and feathers and all sorts of stuff in there. And the lower 2 are prints. And I put these 4 together because I really wanted to give you a sense of where my prints situate in my body of work. That when I think about printmaking, I don't think like, oh, now I'm going to make a big body of prints. But instead, I think now I'm going to make a big body of work about China, and some of it is going to be paintings and drawings, and some might be installation, and some might be prints. The last thing I wanted to say before I really kind of zeroed into my prints is that in the drawings and the paintings that I've showed you so far, a really kind of central approach is collaging and compositing. It feels to me the right way to kind of make visual the experience that I have of being in a place, because nothing that I make a picture of, nothing that I represent is something I actually saw. You know, it's not like I saw this beautiful scene and I made a picture of it. Instead, it's like, there might be a bird from one day and a landscape from another and some lighting from a third that's all supposed to kind of embody an experience that happened on another day. And when I like kind of cut and paste and glue and stick stuff together, it kind of feels like an analogy to the experience of like remembering the place that I am and thinking about it. So I wanted to point that out because now I want to talk about my prints. And as we go along, the role of compositing and how important it is kind of something that I'm going to come back to. So, but like Bruno mentioned, both my degrees are in printmaking. And I made, so I made prints in undergraduate and I made prints in graduate school. But mostly by the time I finished graduate school, I stopped making prints just because I'd gotten interested in painting. So I was doing something else. And I didn't come back to it for something like 20 years. And then like something like maybe about 2015 or so, I had been kind of like, it had been nagging at me. I'd been thinking like, I kind of want to make a print, but my work's changed a lot and I don't know what my print should look like now. And I happened to do a residency in Oaxaca in Mexico. And there was something about the Mexican printmaking that really made me say, oh, that's it. That there's something, and it wasn't like an actual image or a look. It was more a sensibility about printmaking. Their prints were very democratic in ways. They made a lot of them. They were inexpensive. You could buy a fabulous print for $15 on the street. They had a really kind of very strong graphic quality, and it just seemed like a door that I could walk into with printmaking. So when I got back from Oaxaca, these were the first 2 woodcuts I made. And when I made them, I realized 2 things about printmaking that was going to be my trajectory going forward. One was that I was going to need to do some work to really understand, to really integrate printmaking into the rest of my work. And the second was that if I was ever a very good technician, I forgot how. I didn't really remember anything about, like I still kind of like try to remember how it was when I did a color print in graduate school, how I registered the various blocks, and I don't remember. I don't know if I ever knew how to ink a block properly, but I didn't remember once I got started again. And so I kind of had to relearn printmaking when I got back to it. So I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a blurry slide here, but this is just as the next batch of prints I made. And on one hand, you can see that I was getting a little bit of the technique under control. But I was struggling with registration. I was using, for printmakers who know what this is, a pinhole method to make sure that all of the different blocks kind of go down on top of each other in the right place. But because my prints have 6 and 7 colors, as I went along, the pinholes got kind of flabby and the print moved around. And so I wasn't getting a really great registration. But more than that, as I made the prints, I just felt like they weren't resonating the way that the rest of my work did. I liked them. I enjoyed making them, but they just weren't getting the response that I was getting with the rest of my work. The next print that I'm showing you here is actually the next print I made from the last slide. And it's pretty much similar, except one difference, which is the sky. It finally occurred to me that I found this paper by Moab called Moen Copy that's a photosensitized Japanese paper, washi paper. And it prints beautifully. And so I could print digital photos on it and then collage them into the woodcut, and they would look really integrated. It was always like it's hard to kind of tell where the photo stops and the woodcut starts. And I know that I'm not the first person that ever like composited something into a print. Like that's a really common sensibility in printmaking. But it's definitely, it felt better for me when it felt a lot better for me once I was able to begin collaging again. Sorry, I got distracted. A big change happened in my work when about a year later, I was able to go to the Guanlan printmaking base in China. This came about, at the time I taught at Kutztown University and I was the chair of the department, and Evan Summer was our printmaker. And Evan went a lot to China, and he encouraged me to go because he sensed that that I would learn a lot of the things that if I saw what was going on there, I would learn a lot of the things that I was kind of really struggling with. And he was right. I went in 2019 for about 5 weeks, and I had major imposter syndrome. I kind of really felt not not up to the level of what was going on there. But they have, you have access to technicians there, and the technicians were incredibly knowledgeable. And I was able to learn a lot of things that solved so many things I was struggling with. I learned a really useful registration method. I watched how they inked the block. I watched how they cut the block. You know, just so many things that made it so that when I was working on a print, I could think about the print and not think about the technique so much. So while I was there, I made 2 prints, this one and this one, which were based on, like I said, I bring a project with me when I go. So when I went, I had previously been to the crane migration in Nebraska, the Sandhill crane migration. And these 2 pieces were from that. And so they're about 30 inches by 30 inches, and they are obviously about a 7-color woodcut with a digital photo collage in each one of them. And you can see the collage, it's in the bottom. Let's see if I can, there's a cursor, so you can see that the collage kind of ends there. And then I just cut it out here around the print. And usually what I do is I print like most of the colors, and then I put the collage down, and then I print a black block on top of it, which kind of pulls the whole thing together. When I got back, like I said, I was working with material in China, and I made this print and this print, which are about 19 by 22 inches. Again, woodcuts with digital photo collages. And I was trying to just do on my own what the technician helped me do to make, you know, to kind of get more comfortable with the with all the various things that I had learned there. And then the next opportunity that I had to make prints was that in the fall of the pandemic, starting in September and ending in December, I had a residency at Gutenberg Arts, which was really wonderful. That was kind of in the darkest part of the pandemic. Well, the whole pandemic was dark, but it was an especially dark period where, you know, in the fall when it seemed like it would never end and the election was going on. And I kind of felt like the residency saved my life. It was so great to be with, there was 2 other residents, Tenjin Ikeda, and who gave an artist talk also, and Devin Stakonis. And plus just the whole community at Gutenberg, the people that moved through there were really, it was really wonderful to have them in the sadness of the pandemic. So when I started, the first 2 prints I made, these 2 here, which I think they're about like 15 by 19 or something, I just tried to make a really good print. There's no digital collage in there. I was beginning to work with my New Jersey subject matter. And when I started in the pandemic, when I started in the residency, it kind of like happened abruptly. I had just finished the Pulaski Skyway, and I hadn't really had time to think about like, oh, how am I going to make my prints work with this work that I'm doing? So after I did these 2, which felt like they weren't really part of my work, I came back to the idea of compositing. And once I did, again, the work really kind of fit with the body of work that I was making. And this is really very much a piece of that body of work that I showed you of New Jersey. Again, it's a woodcut with a digital photo in the middle. It's about 15 by 15 inches or something. It's not that big. But I was doing a lot of work at DeCourt Park, if any of you know that, in the Meadowlands. And this is just kind of looking across from DeCourt towards all the I-95 bridge and the Pulaski Skyway and such so on. And this was the last piece I made at the residency called Sharing the Same Sky. The bottom is the Newark Airport, obviously, and then the top is the sky of New Jersey, that to me just like embodies everything that I learned about as I dealt with the landscape in the Meadowlands, and just kind of how crushed together the humans and the nature are there. There's 2 more images I want to show you that bring up other things in the about printmaking that are really on my mind. While I was at the residency, Gutenberg Arts has a community garden in the back. And so the left-hand slide is a picture of it. And on the wall of Gutenberg Arts that overlooks the community garden, there was a boarded up window where I decided to do something that I asked if I could, and they gave me permission, that had been on my mind, which was to try to wheat paste an image that would be part of the garden. So I called this one the stork that blesses the garden with fertility. And it's about, the window itself is about 7 feet high. The stork is maybe 4 feet high or something like that. And so the background is just outdoor latex paint. And the stork is made out of a black and white woodcut on newsprint. And then where you see white, that's just the white of the window. And then the beak and the legs are gold leaf. And the idea of wheat pasting had been in my mind kind of as a subset of thinking about public art. One of the things that has become more and more important to, I think in some kind of way, like the pandemic was, I think it shook a lot of people up in terms of, a lot of artists in terms of their practice and thinking about like, why do we do this? And who is our audience? And does this matter? And is there a way to make what we do maybe matter a little bit more? Because this moment feels like such, at least to me, such an urgent moment where, so much is on the line. Prints in general, I think it's partially why I have been, as I've gone along, more committed to the role of prints in my larger practice, because they are first of all affordable compared, if you make a painting and you spend 3 months on it, you can't sell it for $300, but you can sell a print for $300. And that means that like not only rich people can buy art, like everybody can buy, or many people can buy art. It makes art affordable, and it gets your work out to more people where they can like spend time with it and think about your ideas, hopefully. Public art is a whole nother step in that direction. The idea of putting something outside instead of inside, where it can live, where people can pass by, is another way to use printmaking to not only get art out to more people, but to put it out to people who maybe weren't planning on looking at art, people who weren't reaching out to art, but people who might be grabbed by it or affected by it. And so it also widens your audience. And so I was really pleased with the way this came out, and excited. I'm making a proposal right now to do a larger wheat paste mural somewhere else. And I'm really hoping that this stays in, like, is kind of a whole nother element in my practice, because it feels like it plays a role that none of the other art that I make is able to do. It sort of situates in a place that nothing else does. So it is a thing that I'm excited about right now, and something that's very much on my mind. And then the last image that I have is this one, which it just happens to be the last woodcut that I made. It's kind of large. It's maybe about 32 inches by, I think it's about 20 by 32 inches. And, back to my same tricks, it is a color woodcut with a digital photo collage. And the reason that I kind of left it here as a closing is that this summer, as the pandemic kind of eased, hopefully eased and not just temporarily, and we were able to move around a little bit. I obviously, as I mentioned, I was able to travel a little bit, and I did the residency in Wyoming. And then I also was able to visit some friends. I think one of them is on in Tucson. And the combination of the two of them, the Arizona and Wyoming, kind of feel like I brought back between the two trips, a month in Wyoming and 2 weeks in Arizona, an enormous amount of subject matter again. And the two places kind of speak together to me, going back to my initial introduction, that places kind of tell me stories, and then the in my studio, I try to like turn that into visual material that like speaks for the place. Wyoming and Arizona kind of speak together to raise a lot of, the stories are similar. I guess that's what I would say in the two of them, in both sort of the starkness and the beauty of the land, but also in the precariousness of the landscape and the effect that climate has on it and all of those things. And so I think that this is kind of this and the goat that I showed you at the very beginning are the beginnings of a new body of work based on the West. You know, basically I've shown you three here. I've shown you China, I've shown you New Jersey, and then this is the beginnings of a third body of work that is, hopefully I'll be able to follow up based on the stories that the West seems to be telling me. So let me unshare. How to stop share? There. So that was the work that I kind of wanted to share with you. And I was hoping maybe you would have some questions or we could talk about it or have some conversation based on the things we talked about.
If you do have questions, please put them into the Q&A or you can raise your hand. I think somebody raised their hand during the talk. Where would I see?
Maybe I can ask a question to get us started.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of curious for your prints, what type of ink are you using? Is it oil-based or water-based or?
Yeah, it's oil-based ink.
Oil-based, okay.
It just is what I've learned and what I know, so.
Okay. And then two, hopefully this will be of interest, like there's a bunch of printmakers in this audience. I know registering multicolor prints can be pretty difficult. So you were saying when you were in China, they taught you a different registration system. Could you possibly describe that?
Yeah, I was, in case anybody asked, I brought a block with me. I don't know if you can see
great.
here. This is
Perfect.
this one I'm working on right now. So it's a big thing. So that's the block. And I'm going to get close to the camera so you can see it here. So the image is about this big. The paper is bigger than the whole block of wood, but the image ends about here. And if you can see, there is a line right here.
Yes.
That I cut with a ruler and a X-Acto knife. Mm-hmm. And then I dig 3 grooves. There's a groove here, a groove here. Sorry, it's right here. And then there's one down here. So each piece of paper on the back of it just has a little tick mark, and the tick mark lines up with this. Mm-hmm. So when I lay the paper down, I just insert the paper into the groove so the tick mark aligns, and then make sure it sits the edge of the paper. You do need machine edged paper, or you have to cut it. You can't use like a deckled edge on this side, or you won't get an exact registration. But you just like slide to make sure the paper is here, here, and there, and that the tick mark lines up. And then that not only, it seems like kind of a little imprecise, but I actually don't, it works so well that I don't think about registration at all in the printing process. It just works. And the other thing that I'm able to do then, if like I have a multi-block print, which this one is, for example, when I'm moving from the information from one block onto another to make sure that it's going to work on the second block in the correct way, I just take a newsprint of the image with a tick mark on the newsprint. And so I run it through the press. I ink it up, run it through the press. And then I move over to the other block and stick it in, make sure the tick mark lines up. And then the ink run through the press again, and the ink offsets onto the next print. And it really works, I mean, better than any registration and easier than any registration system that I had used before. And you don't need like to build something or have like a bunch of stuff to do it. It just, I don't know, it works for me, and I don't struggle with it. So that's how it is.
Great, thank you.
Maybe the whole world has seen that, but for some reason when they showed it to me, I was like, wow, I've never seen that before. And it was brand new. So like, I may have been the last printmaker in the world to see it, but it was it. Does anybody else have any questions or observations or anything to talk about?
I had a question. I love seeing the work. You know, I'd seen it before in progress at Gutenberg. Do you, you work mostly in woodcut, or do you do other kinds of printmaking, or is it just?
I did in, it's funny, when I went to the Gutenberg residency in the beginning, Russ kind of gave me the tour, and he's like, and this is our silk screen area in case you're interested. And I was like, mm-mm. And then he's like, this is the etching area in case you're interested. And I was like, mm-mm. I did do them. I never did silk screen. I did do etching and lithography when I was in art school. But coming back to it, I just didn't want to learn another thing. I just decided I wanted to do one thing well, and that was going to be it. So that was just what it's going to be. If I was going, the prints, the way I conceive of prints are pretty complicated. They're you know, they're multicolored, and then there's collaged elements and stuff, and they really are pretty hard to do. And right now I'm still working and getting confident and comfortable with this. I'm not in a hurry to like learn a whole nother thing. Actually, the next thing I'm trying to learn is the wheat pasting, and to do that well, because in the first try that threw up a lot of issues. So I don't think I really want to move into a whole nother area of printmaking. It just sounds too hard, and I'm too old. I think there's 3 questions. There's a bunch of questions on the Q&A. It says you mentioned that you're interested in exploring the relationship between environments and humans. Can you talk a bit more about how you incorporate humans and human-made spaces into animal-focused work? I think I do it more or less. Some of it, of course, is in the human-made, like in New Jersey, I think it's the most obvious. I don't ever make, it's been years since I made a picture of a person, or if I do, it's like for example, in all those New Jersey drawings where I made one a week, one of them had a human in it. I'm not sure why, but I identify the animals work really well for me as kind of stand-ins for humans. Like for example, in the China work, when there were groupings of animals, like the groupings of the kangaroos or the birds, to me, that is talking about, they become, I guess as a viewer of my own work, I see them the way that I see humans. For example, in China, that they were a group of creatures interacting with each other in a way that was really opaque to me, that I couldn't understand. And yet at the same time, they were extremely like noble and beautiful. And that was actually what that work was about, was that sort of competing experience of on one hand, not understanding them at all, and on the other hand, feeling a great deal of empathy for them. And the animals are just sort of the stand-in for that, that experience. So more than anything else, I think the animals are the humans in the pictures as I think about them. And anonymous attendee, I don't know who you are, if that answered, if you want to follow up with that at all, let me know, because I'm not sure I answered that well enough. The next question is, what were the similarities of what Wyoming and Arizona spoke to me about? The first thing I would say is water. They both have water situations going on, or environmental situations going on. Maybe Arizona much more than Wyoming. Arizona's in a severe drought. Wyoming is in about a bit of a drought too. There are forest fires, there's just extreme weather, all of those things going on. More similarly is that Wyoming very much so, and Arizona somewhat are red states. Arizona is a purple state. And while on one hand, there is a lot of sort of what you would expect in the politics of those states, what's going on in the climate is just absolutely undeniable. In Arizona, there was no denying that they are in a severe drought. In Wyoming, I've been to Wyoming 3 times. I was at Gentile in 2015, I was at UCross in 2017, and then I was at Gentile again in 2021. And in the first 2 times I was in Wyoming, there were mule deer everywhere. Whenever I wanted a mule deer in my work, I walked outside and I took a picture of a mule deer. It was that easy to like see them. When I got back, and like the very first thing that hit me when I was there in 2021 was mule deer were gone. And it was the first thing I did. I turned to people and I said, where are they? They were everywhere and they're not here. And nobody really had an answer. And then I read an article in the local Buffalo paper that they don't really understand what happened to the mule deer. They collared about 1,000 of them, and they're doing a 3-year study, and they found some things. They found that there's a chronic wasting disease that deer have, and it's affecting them. They found that for some reason the deer are lactating later into the fall, and it's making them weaker. They found that there's more mountain lion predators, but all of that still hasn't explained what happened to the mule deer. So people in Wyoming, you can be as conservative as they want, but they drive around and the mule deer are gone. And so there is no missing the precariousness of the environment in those places. And I think that was what is the strongest similarity between the two that allows me to talk about those 2 states as one. Again, Paula, if you want me to follow up on that, let me know. There's another question. When you are printing your digital images on washi paper, what kind of printer are you using? I have in my studio, I have an Epson SureColor P800. It's really fabulous. And it does a great job. Next question. You said you include pastels. Can you explain? Let me quickly go back to an image. Should I go back to an image for a second? Can you see my cursor when I
think you need to share screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I'm afraid if I get out of this, I don't know how to get out of this. There it is. Hold on. Sorry. Thanks. This was the one, this one here. Can you all see this one now?
Yes.
Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
This is all pastel here, the whole mountain. Usually I do a preliminary layer of watercolor. And then some areas stay almost all watercolor. Like for example, the goat is almost all watercolor. This cactus is all a watercolor. But sometimes the watercolor is just a first layer. And then I go in with, I use pan pastels. I don't know if you know what those are. And also stick pastels. So the sky is just a solid blue pastel. And this is pan pastels right there. So let me unshare my screen there and find my questions again. Hello, this is Luis. Unfortunately, I logged in late due to time zone. Hi, Luis, hi. I noticed you brought up newsprint, wheat paste, and public art. I'm wondering if your residency in Oaxaca implemented that idea. Yes, absolutely. Luis and I were in Oaxaca together. And when we were there had just been a international wheat pasting festival, or public, I think that's what it was. I don't know if you've been to Oaxaca, but the buildings are really bright colors. And the way that it was set up was that they invited artists from all over the world and like really great wheat paste and public arts people. It was street art. It was street art. It wasn't wheat paste. It was street art. And they walked around the city, and if they found a wall they liked, they asked the owner if they could use it. And if the owner said yes, the owner had a choice of keeping it for 6 months, or then the city would come paint it back over. But most people kept it. So as we walked around, there would be like just amazing street art all over. There was, there was like 3 swoon pieces, and there was I can't remember all of the names of them, but they were really great. And yes, I have been thinking about it ever since. So that was a big part of my inspiration. And Kay asked, do you think your background in painting informs the palette? The prints are beautifully consistent with the colors in your paintings, or does that come originally from your printmaking background? No, I think that the paint, I think you're right, that when I mix my colors in printmaking, I spend about as much time mixing the ink as I do printing it. It takes me forever to get exactly the color I want. And I think that when I think of color woodcut, feels really a lot like watercolor painting. I put a fair amount of transparency in my ink. It's kind of like I go from light to dark the way I do in watercolor. And similarly in watercolor, I spend a long time mixing my colors. So yeah, I think that my approach to color probably does come from my painting. And I think that is all the questions. Those were great questions. Anybody have anything else, or?
Any other questions from people? There's something in the chat. Anil Kruger says, wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. That was really great. And I didn't get a chance to see who all is here because I was.
There's a question from.
I can't see that.
There's a question in the chat from Lawrence. Do you create backgrounds for each prints?
When you work with can you explain the question a little better? Do you create backgrounds for each prints when you work with pastel? What do you mean? Try one more time.
I guess the question, maybe if I could ask, do you combine, when you're working with printmaking with woodcuts, are you using pastels there, or is
no, never.
Okay.
No, the woodcuts are only
paintings that you.
The paintings have pastels. The woodcuts, I'm sorry, maybe that was the confusion all along. There's no pastel in the woodcuts. The woodcuts only have digital photos, and the rest of it is all woodcut. Just sort of straight relief prints. Thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. That was really great. It was beautiful to see your work and to hear more about your process. And thank you so much for giving us this talk tonight.
And thank you to Manhattan Graphics, and thank you attendees for coming. I really appreciated you listening to the talk and for your questions.
And Robin reminds me, thank you, Robin, your website is in the chat.
Yeah, so if anybody.
Agulnik.com. So if anybody wants to see more, they can go there. Thank you everyone for attending. We will be back in December with another artist talk. Gregory Page, correct, Robin?
Yes, Gregory.
It's Gregory Page. So please join us for that. And we are open 5 days a week now. So please, if you were a member, come back, sign up again, come visit us, take a class. We're going to be starting our spring term soon in January, and emails and brochures about signing up will be going out very soon. So please watch this space for that. Thank you, Cheryl, again. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Great night.